Welcome to Algebra 1. The learning goal for this episode is to learn to apply the Pythagorean Theorem and its converse to figure out the lengths of the sides of right triangles. First, some necessary vocabulary. The hypotenuse of a right triangle is the side opposite the right angle. It is always the longest side of a right triangle. The legs are the two sides that form the right angle. A theorem is a statement that can be proved true. And the Pythagorean theorem states that if a triangle is a right triangle, then the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs equals the square of the length of the hypotenuse. Or, if a and b are the lengths of the legs and c is the length of the hypotenuse, a squared plus b squared must equal c squared. Let's look at an example. We want to find the unknown length for the triangle shown. Since this is a right triangle, we know that a squared plus b squared has to equal c squared. So we can fill in 5 for b and 7 for c. We then square 5 and 7 and subtract 25 to get a squared by itself. We then take the square root of both sides. To simplify this, we can split 24 into 4 times 6, which then gives us 2 root 6. Note that we only use the positive square root since this is a distance, so it can't be negative. Let's try another one. In this example, they describe the lengths of the legs in comparison to one another. It's always helpful to draw a picture in these situations. In this case, they told us the hypotenuse was the square root of 17, so we indicate that. Then they said that one leg was 3 inches longer than the other. Since that's all we know, we use a variable, x, to represent the shorter leg. If the shorter leg is x, then the longer leg has to be x plus 3, since it's 3 inches longer. Now we use our Pythagorean theorem to set up our equation. One leg squared, that's x squared, plus the other leg squared, that's the quantity x plus 3 squared, has to equal the hypotenuse, the square root of 17, squared. Now we go to work. We square x to get x squared, and we square the quantity x plus 3 to get x squared plus 6x plus 9, and we square the square root of 17 to get 17. Now we can combine those two x squareds to get 2x squared, and we subtract 17 from both sides to get our equation equal to 0. We can factor out a 2, then factor the remaining trinomial into the quantity x plus 4 times the quantity x minus 1. Since it's equal to 0, that means x either has to be negative 4 or 1, since that's what would make those factors 0. Since this is a distance, x can only be positive, so we only use the positive 1. If x is 1, then our other leg has to be 3 inches longer, so x plus 3 must be 4. Therefore, the lengths of our legs are 1 inch and 4 inches. Let's try a third example. This time we're given all 3 sides of a triangle and asked to figure out if it is a right triangle. So we substitute those 3 values into our Pythagorean theorem, making sure we fill in the longest side for our hypotenuse, c. We then begin to simplify both sides, and we find that they are not equal. Therefore, since the Pythagorean theorem does not hold, this cannot be a right triangle. Now for our guided practice section. We're going to work through some problems together. You do not need to write down these problems, just step through them with me. At each step, I'm going to prompt you the question you should be asking yourself. Then I'll pause for about 5 seconds for you to think about it and answer it for yourself. Then I'll show you. So, for this problem, our first question is, what are we trying to do here? What we're trying to do is find the length of the missing leg. How do we do that? We use the Pythagorean theorem and fill in the 3 for one of the legs and the 5 for the hypotenuse. Now what? Now we square the 3 and the 5. What's next? We subtract 9 to get x squared by itself. Now what? Now we take the square root of both sides. What's next? When we take the square root, we get 4. We don't use negative 4 because the distance can't be negative, so positive 4 is our answer. Let's try another one. What do we do first? We should draw a picture and label what we know. What's next? Next, we set up our equation using the Pythagorean theorem. Now what? Now we square out each of our terms. What's next? We can combine the two x squareds and then subtract 130 from both sides to get our equation equal to 0. Now what? Now we begin to factor by factoring out the greatest common factor of 2. What's our next step? Then we can factor the remaining trinomial into the quantity x plus 9 times the quantity x minus 7. What's next? If this is going to equal to 0, then x is either negative 9 or positive 7. But since this is a distance, it can't be negative, so we only use positive 7. Are we finished? No, because we still need to figure out our other leg, x plus 2. If x is 7, then x plus 2 is going to be 9. Now what? Now we answer the question by stating that the length of the two legs are 7 centimeters and 9 centimeters. We need to be careful to include the units. We're done. Let's try one more. What do we do first? First, we put the lengths of the three sides into the Pythagorean theorem to see if they work, making sure we put the longest side as the hypotenuse. What's next? We square each length. Now what? Now we add them together. What's next? Since the two sides of the equation are equal this time, the Pythagorean theorem holds, so this must be a right triangle. Now for the self-check section. In this section, you're going to physically pause the video as you work out the problem on paper in your notebook. Then you'll press play to check to see how you did. You'll have 5 seconds to pause the video after I stop speaking before I show you the solution. Please pause the video now, work out the problem, then press play to check. Here is the solution. Please compare this to your work. Pause the video here if you need more time to compare, then press play again to move to the next problem. Same thing on this problem. Pause the video, write down this problem and work it out in your notebook, then press play to check. Please pause the video now. Here's the solution. Again, pause the video if you need more time to compare this to your work. Let's do one more. Pause the video, write down this problem and work it out in your notebook, then press play to check. Please pause the video now. Here is the solution. Again, pause the video if you need more time to compare this to your work. In closing, let's review our learning goal. We wanted to learn how to apply the Pythagorean theorem and its converse to figure out the lengths of the sides of right triangles. We did that by learning the Pythagorean theorem and then applying it to various right triangle problems and solving the resulting equation.